Hey kids, my name is Craig, but you can call me Boxman. Today you will watch me build and review Trumpeter's 1/700th scale USS Washington. We are closer to the year 3627 than to the time when I last finished building a model. That's why I won't be using any aftermarket brass parts. And definitely not because I have the fine motor skills of a goldfish. This kit is relatively simple, with 256 parts on 12 trees, and was tooled in 2006, which is pretty old. Just like your mom. Trumpeter gets an extra chicken nugget for including the bottom hull. All my homies vehemently repudiate and fervently abhor waterline models. I get started by ignoring the instructions and gluing the hull together. My good buddy Capillary Action forcefully coerces the delicious-smelling cement into even the smallest of cracks, allowing me to just dot the applicator around the hull. Despite our best efforts, there is a noticeable seam at the joint. I couldn't let this stand. I recruited the help of my special yellow Tamiya masking tape, who cordoned off the seam as I prepared the secret weapon. A dollop of putty must be brutally obtained through squeezing. Afterwards, it must be applied to the seam, flawlessly, without any mistakes. Once the putty is 75% dry because I didn't want to wait, we bid our farewells to the masking tape. He makes a slow and dramatic exit. Hopefully none of the putty spilled underneath. It could have been worse. We're not done with this seam just yet. Sandpaper is needed to flatten the surface and to ensure that both halves of the hull are flush. This generates a significant amount of dust that will kill you if you're not careful. It's time to prime. This primer was a pain in the stern to spray and clean up because I somehow didn't have the proper thinner for it. To give him some credit, he helped me spot the scratches in the hull, which I must promptly eliminate with a fine sandpaper.
Alright, let's carry on.
I let loose on these poor walls with such speed and ferocity that they disappear from my workbench. After scouring my garage floor for an hour, all the rogue parts have been reunited and can now be permanently restrained to the model. Like before, Capillary Action pulls the unwitting cement into the cracks, spreading it evenly and leaving no incriminating evidence. My least favorite part of any build is attaching the deck fixtures. This is because it's a grim reminder of the masking I'm going to need to do when I start painting, but also because I always manage to break or lose a ship ton of parts. I must admit that I lost so many AA guns that I had to scavenge some kits in my stash for spares. That whole experience had me feeling severely downtrodden. Luckily, I can move on to building the superstructure, starting with this huge deck. I busted out the old plast strut cement, which I almost never use. Now it's time for the big guns. There are a bunch of turrets that need assembly. They aren't great, especially the 5-inch 38s, but I could have done a better job at removing mold lines. It's paramount to recklessly swipe the turrets around once they're finished. The battleship's tower assembly is quite straightforward. With a lack of guide pins or anything of that nature, the parts need little convincing in order to get them to sit nicely. It's just a matter of working in small sub-assemblies, layer by layer. There's not much else to say, so I'ma quit yapping. I spent 30 minutes looking for that piece. If I weren't so angry while cutting the parts, they might not have fled in terror.
Okay.
This snappable mast completes the forward superstructure. Now I divert my unrelenting fury to the unfortunate souls that comprise the rear structures. Various battleshipy parts must be recruited for my efforts. These include the ship's funnels and fire directors, all which must be forcefully restrained with the help of cement. Even a few Chicago pianos are needed. As I finally wrap up construction, 2 of these little float planes are emancipated. I try to hide the fact that I cut off one of the propeller blades. Before I can start painting, the same black primer from before is used to coat all the subassemblies. This helps to make the model look really cool, even when it's unfinished. I'm gonna get started with the deck. I use some Tamiya Sea Blue to lay down a base coat, which is mixed in a 1-to-1 paint to thinner ratio. The pieces of malnourished masking tape will cover the darker base coat, providing an illusion of wooden planks. This process is repeated twice, with differing tones of paint each time. The upper half of the hull is masked off in preparation for the anti-fouling. I'm not sure why I didn't just mask the black boot stripe. I'm just built different. First, I apply an even layer of Tamiya hull red. It's quite dark, so I mix a highlight tone using flat red and deck tan, which I spray lightly along the edges to create an artificial sense of lighting. It's time we ask the 18mm width yellow Tamiya masking tape covering the upper hull to leave. His brother is asked to cover the lower hull as we prepare to paint the upper works. For this purpose, I eyeball a mixture of blue and sea blue. Like before, I use a highlight color to create artificial lighting along the edges. The moment of truth. It's time to slowly peel away the masking tape and see if the result looks good or not.
I mean, it's all right.
Now comes the dreaded process of masking the horizontal surfaces. When I say this shit was boring, you'd better believe it, because half this hobby, which I do for fun, is literally watching paint dry. Of course, you could buy an aftermarket wooden deck, but my culture forbids me from doing so. If you still think I have any idea what I'm doing, you're gonna want to buckle up, because here's when I start goofing up bad. For some godforsaken reason, I choose to lay down a purple base, because I am an artiste. I then mix a tannish gray color out of God knows what to create highlights and tone down the purple. It's not looking too shabby. First crisis has been averted. Removing the deck masking is a huge undertaking in and of itself. Next time, I'll try to apply the tape less randomly, so it'll come off in bigger pieces. We can finally bid adieu to the last piece of masking tape. My skills with the paintbrush leave a lot to be desired. Fortunately, there is little need for brush painting. After a few other touch-ups, the waterslide decals must be applied. Soaking in warm water will break its resolve, allowing them to be easily evicted from the backing sheet. After all this time, I can finally complete the actual first step of the instructions, gluing the main deck. Now all of the sub-assemblies can be permanently glued on as well. Gluing them now was a minor blunder, as I should have done it after I weathered the parts separately. Another room temperature IQ oopsie I made was covering the entire surface of the model in a black wash. Not only was cleaning it all up a mammoth task, but I also wasn't able to achieve the desired shading effect. However, the worst is yet to come. Let's take a quick breather by attaching the little lifeboats. The big fuck up. While spraying a clear coat, I accidentally spilled a puddle onto the surface, ruining it. I didn't plan to add anything else, but in an attempt to cover up the mess, I used some Green Artist's oil paint and blended it using turpentine. The even bigger fuck-up was when I left the project for 2 weeks, then came back to find that the oil paint could no longer react to whatever thinner I threw at it. It's as if some mean-spirited ghost clear-coated my model while I was away. As a result, the green algae-looking thing looks pretty terrible, to my great dismay. Now I just want to get this thing done and dusted. Attaching the flags is a precarious task, and I ruin them with superglue in this out-of-focus shot. To add insult to injury, I even mess up dry brushing the damn nameplate by dabbing too much paint on the first stroke. I'm actually tweaking RNFR on God. Thankfully, the ordeal has ended. While I'm somewhat disappointed in the finish, I'm just glad that I can call this thing done. She doesn't look half bad, If you can somehow look past the crooked masts that I broke at least 5 times each off camera, the missing propeller blade, and the messed up paint job. Now onto the kit itself. The parts had no problems getting along, and none had any noticeable deformities. The instructions were clear and simple. One thing almost all trumpeter kits do, which I think is stupid, is that they make you glue the hull together in the last step, which I'll always recommend you do first. Remember kids, the instruction booklet is just a suggestion, just like the Geneva Convention. Here's a goldfish cheddar cracker snack for scale reference. My scores for this kit as according to the Boxman D.I.C.K scale are as follows. Detail, 6.2 out of 10. Interesting to build, 6.9 out of 10. Craftsmanship, 7.5 out of 10. Keen fit, 8.2 out of 10. Final score, 28.8 out of 40 or 72%. Not bad. This kit is Boxman approved. Anyways, that's all you're gonna get for now. Adios.